everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Inner Carnivore. I'm Carnivore JT. My first guest on the show, a good friend of mine, ReelJesseBelvin. How are you, Jesse?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing
Good,
great.
man. So Jesse and I go back a little ways with pretty decent experience doing podcasts, mostly in the crypto space. Wanted Jesse on for a couple of reasons. One, because he has extensive podcast experience, so I can help get all the kinks worked out before I start getting real people on. I'm joking. But two, I also wanted to get you on because I know you have done some health and fitness stuff in the past. You kind of have given carnivore a little bit of a try, and I think it's awesome for people to hear what somebody's experiences who hasn't ever done this before, right? Like they gave it a shot, maybe did it for a few weeks, what the ins and outs, the struggles, that kind of stuff. I feel a lot of what we get is people have done carnivore for 45 years and they're like, it's the easiest thing ever. I have a steak in the morning, and then I have a steak for lunch, then I have a steak for dinner, I drink some water, and I go to bed.
That's right.
And your normal person is like, I can't do that, right? So thought it'd be a great opportunity to have you on. Plus, I think it'll be a super fun episode.
Yeah, man. I'm actually really excited about this. You know, when you first asked me, I was kind of like, I'm not really sure how much I can bring to the table as far as value goes. But then I was like, well, shoot. I mean, I can't speak for what the value is that everyone else is going to get, but I have a lot to say about the diet. And you know what at least for me personally, like what my struggles have been. As far as not just the carnivore diet, but just finding something in general that works for me. You know, some of you guys I've seen online are like strict. It's like if it bleeds, they eat it. If it doesn't, they don't. And then some people are like, well, you know, we get a little mix in a little bit of other stuff too. So yeah, it'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, and that's honestly what I want to do a lot with this podcast and a bunch of the guests, because a lot of people see my name, right? My name's Carnivore JT, and they assume, first, if they don't know anything about the diet, they assume I eat like a lion. They're like, oh, so you catch your prey with your teeth and you tear its flesh and you eat it like that. Or
just vegan.
Right. Or they super know the ins and outs of the carnivore diet, and they're like, oh, so you only eat meat and salt and butter and bacon, right? And so it's this weird line, you know, in all of my bios. I try and say, hey, I'm, you know, carnivore with a little bit of animal-based, which for people out there who don't know the animal-based diet, I consider it part of the carnivore diet, but moving a little bit towards adding fruits, a little bit more lenient with dairy and stuff like raw honey. The reason I consider it part of the carnivore diet is Paul Saladino, was probably the most influential person towards the carnivore diet, wrote a book called The Carnivore Code. His name on social media was Carnivore MD. He's a big proponent of animal-based. There's been some clashing with, you know, the true carnivore purists lately, because he does eat the fruit. So he's changed his name recently, but in my estimation, that's still kind of a variation. So that's why I stick with it. I ask people sometimes, I'm like, do you want me to change my name to mostly carnivore, sometimes animal-based JT? Like, would that be an acceptable description of it? But yeah, I want to get like the whole encompassing, you know, get some keto people in here, some low carb, maybe some paleo, just a broad spectrum so people can learn more about carnivore.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny too, because I am definitely one of those. I will say this for anyone listening: what I say is definitely not the gospel. I will just tell you, I'm a trier. I'm a habitual trier. I have like ADHD, and it literally carries into everything that I do. I get bored really quickly of like things, and I feel like I'm constantly shaking it up, and so it's like if I'm doing something too long, I feel weird about it, and that's been the same thing for dieting too. And it's like, I just think, you know, I really actually do love the carnivore community. I'll be honest, because like I actually think that you know, you get your weirdos in any space, with like the diehard people that are like, no, this is like, you know, like I started my 5-year-old on all this diet. It's like, okay, well, whatever. It's like, but for me, I'm like, I actually think, and feel free to tell me I'm stupid here, but I feel like a lot of the the principles, I guess, in carnivore are very similar to some of the other diets out there. They're like in the sense that what is the one that's like cavemen? What do cavemen eat? It's the is that paleo? Is that what?
It's a little bit paleo. There's also one called primal.
Okay. So I'm thinking of like I think it's the CrossFit one. So it was like whatever a caveman could eat, they essentially said like you
Yeah.
can eat. And so I obviously there are tons of differences in what you guys are doing, but it's like I definitely subscribe to a majority meat, majority high protein diet, and I definitely don't subscribe to the fact that all proteins are equal, like all meals are equal. Like, yeah, you can eat a can of beans and it's or no, 40 cans of beans, I suppose. And it's the equivalent to a steak of like, yeah, all right. So, anyways, that's my ramble. I just think that listen, if you're a keto person, if you're a paleo person or whatever, and you're like listening to this, like I actually think that you could still get some serious value out of this because there's differences, but there are some similarities in the sense that a nice steak is pretty much good all the way around. So
Yeah, that's totally my thought, and that's part of what I try and do with a lot of my content is essentially like attack the dogma that is like carnivore, right?
right,
Inevitably, because you've seen my videos, like I'll cook with stuff that's not technically carnivore, right?
yeah,
Using garlic or spices or herbs or stuff like that, and inevitably I'll get somebody who goes, "That's not carnivore," and I'm like, "That's cool. I don't care, right? That's not the point. The point of carnivore is for you to get healthy, get off prescription drugs, and help, alleviate ailments that you might have that
sure,
are being caused by your food and you don't know it. And that's why I want to be broader with this. Carnivore just happens to be the name that I most closely associate with. But that's why I want to bring, paleo people, and I've got a couple keto people lined up because that's the goal of all of them, right? The goal is to eliminate as much processed stuff as possible and help fix some ailments. And that's a lot of people have done that. So had you ever heard of carnivore before I started doing it?
I heard from I wasn't sure what it was called, but I remember seeing Jordan Peterson talking about something, and I'll be honest, whoever was doing the video edit when he was saying like the video that I was watching, it was him talking, and then it flashed over to the steak. For whatever reason, I thought the steak looked disgusting. Like what, and then all of a sudden, I started thinking about like I don't know if you've ever watched like it's called Yellow Jackets on Showtime. It's like they're these girls that crash this plane, and it's essentially like Lord of the Flies. So they end up eating each other, and I started like thinking about that steak, and I started thinking about cannibalism, and I don't know what it was, but it really I was like that's foul, man. And Jordan Peterson's like it's not for the faint of heart. It's not. This diet is not easy, and I just was really like not desold on that clip, but it was really like I'm like, all right, I like steak just as much as the next person, but I was like, I don't know, man. But no, I've definitely seen some really positive stuff coming from what you call it a diet? I don't know, lifestyle. What do you call it?
Yeah, so I use the term diet because inevitably vegans try to use that to attack you, right? They're like, "Oh, you're a carnivore." And I'm like, "Hold on." Like, and I've done a couple of videos on this. I'm like, "Hold on." There's a difference between a classification of animal,
Yeah,
which I am not,
right.
and a diet, which is the what I eat. That's my funniest one because then my next rebuttal is even the highest level of carnivores, you only have to eat 70% of meat to be considered a carnivore in the animal kingdom. And so I'm
Oh,
like, okay, but let's pause on the, I'm an omnivore, an herbivore, whatever. Uh, so yeah, I mean, that is, a big piece of it. The Jordan Peterson thing is he has a unique experience with it. Are you familiar with his daughter?
you and I have discussed this a while ago, but again, even I feel like even when we were talking about it back in the day, I was still just kind of like, huh? And then now I'm a little bit more familiar with her. Now she's serious, right? She's like very serious.
Yeah, so I'm gonna mess her name up. It's a kind of a weird spelling. I think it's Michaela. I've always pronounced it Mikhail just because of how it's spelled. but it's something like that. But she has had crazy problems. Like I was actually reading up on her, and she was the first child to be put on rheumatoid arthritis medication in the state of, I believe it was California. Or no, Canada. She's from Canada. In Canada. So she was like 12 years old on RA medication, which is a serious deal because RA medication suppresses your immune system. And so, like, she's 12 years old with like arthritis and all these hosts of problems. And she would be the definition of the strictest form of carnivore. So strict that they've coined a new term, the lion diet, because she legit only eats meat, salt, and water. Red meat.
She
Red
cooks
meat,
it, though, right? Does she cook it?
Yeah, she cooks it. She
Okay,
cooks it.
cool.
But like, there's no variation for her whatsoever. And so when I'm telling people about carnivore, right, like that's the reaction. They're like, oh gosh, I can never do that. Well, she's extreme, right? Imagine being 12 years old and the doctor's like, you have an autoimmune disease where your body is literally attacking itself. And oh, by the way, you're probably not going to be able to walk when you get of age. And so when I tell people, I'm like, however extreme your situation is, that's how extreme your diet needs to be. So if you are extreme to the max, like she is, then yeah, you might need to be as extreme as she is. And so his view might be a little, because I know she started it, was getting results, and then he tried it, and then he had good results. So that's part of it, because those are two very, very polarizing figures. And a lot of time that's people's first impression of what the carnivore diet, and they go, I can't do that. I can't just eat meat. And so then you have the flip side, which is Paul Saladino. And that's how I got first exposed to it. And, my wife was like, hey, here's, this guy, and he's a little kooky, and, he runs around with no clothes on in Costa Rica and talks about like, using eggs in his hair and like all this stuff.
Sure.
But he had, he's the other end of the spectrum where it's like prioritize meat, eat organs, eats, fruit and honey, and stay away from vegetables, processed stuff. And so I think there's this huge range, and how you hear about the diet oftentimes influences, your perception on it. Right.
Right.
So tell me, I know you started it like a little bit, like you did some of it. What prompted you to start it, and how did that process go for you?
That's a great question. So, so this is actually cool. I've actually never really gotten to discuss this on a podcast before. So how everyone has like body dysphoria in some ways. Okay. So like for me, I've always had a really crazy high metabolism. So I'm like 200 and probably 3 pounds right now. But if you looked at me, you would think I was probably like 170, 160, because I'm a little bit thinner. My metabolism has always been crazy, and it was just until the last handful of years it started catching up to me, where it was like, oh, you actually can't eat whatever you want. You can't eat a bag of hot Cheetos and then all of a sudden it's all good. Like it's like starts to catch up, and I definitely don't. I have 3 kids, but I definitely don't want to blame that, because I could be making other decisions. You just kind of get sucked into that, right? What's easy, what's convenient, what do they want, that sort of thing. So for me, I've always struggled in the sense that I'm a little bit thinner, but I do better for my self-image. I feel better when I'm walking around a little bit bulkier, if that makes sense. So like, not so much concerned about abs, but definitely eating like high calorie, high carb, that sort of thing. So when I guess you would call it, when I was doing more of like a carnivore, but like eggs in the morning, if that makes sense. So I definitely was, I don't know if that still counts. I was doing eggs.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Cause I think eggs are just the mecca of like, I think the more you can eat of eggs, the better. It was great. I feel like it was doing what it was ultimately supposed to do, but I think my problem has never been eating the same thing over and over. So like eating a steak and a chicken like every day, like whatever, like that doesn't bug me at all. I was seeing results that ultimately I don't love, in the sense that if you're eating a steak, like that steak has X amount of calories in it, right? And because you are primarily steak and meat, it's like there's only I feel, and I'm gonna probably sound uneducated, but I feel like there's only so many variations you can kind of do of that. And the results are going to be more, for me, more of a leaner result because it's, I'm not eating spaghetti, right? I'm not eating like pasta. And side note, that is absolutely my kryptonite. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of people out there, and still probably me, because I'm sure you're going to school me here in a second, but it's like that was great results if that was what I was looking for. I prefer more of like the, even though I've never looked like him, I prefer more of like the Bane style look rather than the Fight Club Brad Pitt look where he's got the abs and looks like he hasn't eaten in like 6 months. So that was my struggle. So it wasn't a consistency thing. It was more so like I'm really thinning out here, and it's just energy was up, but morale or mood or whatever you want to call it was a little bit lower because I was just like, man, this is not what I want my body to look like. But yeah, feel free to,
No, I totally get it because I'm very similar to you. I graduated high school at 5'8" and 140 pounds, right? So I was tiny.
Oh
And
man,
part
we
of
were
it
like
was
the same size then. That's wild.
yeah, part of it is I was hurt a lot in sports and even into college.
Sure.
And so that was huge, and that still like affects me today, is not being big enough, right? I'm like, man, I gotta get bigger, I gotta get bigger, I gotta get bigger. And so that, yeah, no, I 100% understand the psyche of it. And that is, I think, part of why carnivore works for so many people is it helps you kind of find your natural, comfortable body weight, right? Which for some people, you don't want it to be less.
That's interesting.
So
Sure.
because you end up, when you're eating that much, red meat with a high fat content and a lot of protein, you don't have to necessarily plan out your meals as much or count your calories. You just kind of eat when you're hungry. And inevitably you just stop being hungry, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's hard to overeat steak, right? I can be super hungry and I love the taste of steak. Like that's my number one food all day, right? I will eat that every day. But like I did it this morning. Like I had a T-bone for breakfast and I'm eating, and I got about 2/3 of the way done, and I just went, "No, I'm done." Right? And boxed up the leftovers and put them in the fridge.
Do you save it for the next meal, or okay?
I'm a meal prep guy. Like
Totally.
It looks like in my videos, it looks like I'm like tinkering around in the kitchen every day and like making up stuff. And I might make a video every day, but for the majority, I'm, cook 4 or 5 steaks at once, put it in the fridge, reheat it, eat. Totally. Like I'm just a meal prep guy through and through. And so, had that been years past and that's rice or that's pasta, like I might go, I can finish that. Like I don't need to save that. Like I'm just going to, eat those last 500 calories just because it's on my plate. And so what people find is when they have a diet like that, satiety is the term where you have this, you're full, like you feel satisfied, you feel like you don't need to eat anymore. And as you start to hit that and you find that your body shifts, right? So if you're severely underweight, you'll find out that you're eating more and it'll help you put on weight. If you're overweight, it'll help you, minimize your portions, and then you'll start to lose weight and you kind of hit this homeostasis. So no, I totally understand that. What was your typical day? Like what would you eat in a typical day when you were doing?
Oh gosh, great question. So I start now, by the way, when I say like, oh, I was eating this or I was eating that, I'm not like climbing to the top of Mount Everest to get the best quality of whatever. Like when I'm eating it, it's like I look at the back. If I'm getting cancer at the same time, I don't know, but I'm telling you, this is what I was eating. So, I was eating probably on average like 8 eggs a morning, and that was actually stems from, shout out to my other buddy Jason. He got me on this, and I hated eggs. He got me on this heavy egg morning diet, and it was disgusting to me. Like I hated eggs. But my wife is Hispanic. She puts hot sauce on everything, and I learned about turkey sausage. So we did like these ground up turkey sausage from I don't know if I'm Jimmy John something something farm, whatever. I don't know. Probably horrible for me in the grand scheme of like what it's doing to my body, but the actual nutrition facts on the back were like, oh, actually, you know what? This is pretty lean. Like this is okay. So I would throw that in my eggs and I throw some hot sauce on there. And the cool thing about that was that I legitimately found something that I felt like I could actually up my eggs to 13 eggs. Or, you know, he originally had me on a 13 egg diet. And I was like, bro, that's not, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I literally, but I would get done with the 8 eggs and the turkey sausage and the hot sauce on top of it, like Tapatio. And I was like, man, that was great. I actually feel like I could eat again in the next couple hours. Like, this is great. And then the lunchtime was always the hardest part, right? Because it was like dinner. I knew I had switched, by the way, watching your stuff, and you would do smash burgers. So instead of smash burgers for me, because obviously I've got the family that also are wanting in on it, it was just easier for me to go to Costco and do the hamburger patties, right? So everyone would get their buns except me. And I would just do 2 hamburger patties. I throw some ketchup on there, which I used to think, you know, you say, oh, ketchup on steak, you can't do that, right? That's the rule, the golden rule. It's so weird. All of a sudden, I'm like eating just ketchup on a hamburger patty, and I felt almost as if I was breaking some rule again. So I was like, this is so weird. But it was really good, and that was the surprising part. I didn't need a wrap. I didn't need a lettuce wrap. I literally just ate my burger, and it was actually delicious. The lunchtime, that was the hardest part. So that's where I got in the most trouble. That's where it would be like, you know, sometimes I was good. Sometimes it would just be some chicken. Sometimes it would actually be a legit steak. I struggle with eating steak by itself. So I will say, like, you know, sometimes I'll go get like jasmine rice or whatever. And this is obviously when I was being legit, I was actually being legit. So the meat was the problem though. So sometimes it would be like I would eat, what do you call those? Like Jewish hot dogs. What do you call those? Where it's like there's no.
The Hebrew Nationals.
Yeah, so it'd be just the dog. Now, obviously, you know, I'm sure carnivore people out there would be like, "That's disgusting. What are you doing?" Like, wait, but I'm like, no, I'm like, if I'm gonna do it, even if it's wrong while I'm getting into it, I'm gonna do it and then adjust as I get better as I go along. And so I would just eat like 4 or 5 of those with no buns and ketchup. But the thing is like, again, internally, I don't know what it's doing to me. I throw some fish oil down the hatch and I'm like, yeah, I'm probably okay. But it's like, but yeah, I started leaning out. And the one thing that I will say, out of the short time that I was like actually like doing that, if you actually want to consider that a carnivore diet, I felt so much more energy. I do feel like the more lean I tend to eat, the less I feel like I need like an energy drink or caffeine or anything like that. It's actually pretty remarkable. And so you said something earlier, and I was like, that's actually really interesting. Carnivore diet has like a weird way of actually putting you at the weight you're supposed to be at. And I was like, oh, I've actually never thought about that. You know, here I am being like, man, I want to be like 230 pounds and like feel like a brick wall. And I was like, you know what? My frame is probably not supposed to be 230 pounds and a brick wall, you know? So, you know, anyways, that's my rant.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And the cool thing about, so this is why I try and attack like the dogma of carnivore, right? I already know there's people out there, whether they'll listen to this or not, I don't know. I already know there's people out there who are like, oh gosh, you can't do ketchup. Like you got nightshades in it and you got sugar and right. Like I understand that. Right.
Yeah.
But I am also, you know, I have a lot of experience in health and fitness and nutrition. And I understand that if you tell people right away that they can't do these little things,
Right.
which in the grand scheme of things, like if you do that for 6 months and your only thing is you eat, you know, maybe a serving of rice every other day, and maybe you have a little bit of ketchup and maybe you have a little hot sauce, like that's not going to be the differentiating factor between whether you're successful or not. Like it's not. You
Okay.
know,
This is sorry. This is so good that you said that. So it just reminded me of something. So when again, I've done different diets, different meal plans. I've had personal trainers build me plans, like, and I've the plan I'd mentioned earlier. I'm not going to mention what the plan was, but the saying was really similar, and I love that you just said that. He goes, "Hey, this plan is like down to your like your macro, whatever. He's like, I've got this to a science for you. He said, if you follow it, even 85% of what I've made for you, he goes, your life will be changed forever. And obviously, I don't like to like half ass stuff, like I guess, so it's like ketchup. I actually didn't even know. I didn't even think about ketchup being a problem. So it's like, but I love that you said that, because if I can do something where it's like, yeah, I could throw like a little bit of ketchup on there or whatever, it's like, let me get to a certain point to where now I'm not questioning whether this is actually part of my lifestyle, and then I'll make the necessary tweaks down the road. But if you're starting off on something as uncomfortable as eating like a steak by itself, whatever, and then people are like, yeah, you can't even throw on a smidge of condiment, I'd be like, yo.
Yeah, it's a problem. Like, it's a perfect example. I posted a video today of my steak hash, right, where I use cheese to crisp up like potatoes. And I'm not really a condiment guy, right? Like, I love some condiments. I post videos with condiments because I think it adds depth and it adds flavor and it adds color, especially, right? And so when you look at something, on a video or on a picture, the color contrasting helps. And then you look at it and then you can decide for yourself whether you want to add those condiments. So even though a lot of my videos have that, right, like the sprinkle of parsley on top or some red pepper flakes, when I'm cooking for myself and just eating, I don't do it.
Oh,
right.
okay.
I eat burger and cheese. I eat steak straight. I eat, eggs with maybe a little bit of salt. Sometimes I forget to season, right? Like I've done steaks. I'll typically dry brine, so they almost always have salt. But I've done burgers with no seasoning, eggs with no seasoning, and I get like halfway through it and I'm like, well, I didn't season this at all. Whatever. So that is how I am, and I'm totally fine with that. But so I posted this video and I made a hot sauce sour cream, right? It's literally just sriracha and sour cream, mix it together, go over the top. Adds a little bit of flavor, adds a little bit of color, lets people go, oh, that's okay, that's a cool idea. And somebody's like, shouldn't do sriracha. I was like, why not? And he's like, they use processed sugar. And I was like, bro, it's 1 gram per serving. Like, I looked up. He's like, it's the second ingredient by volume. It's not okay. I was like, bro, it is literally 1 gram of sugar per serving. Like, and in this whole thing, there may be like 5 or 6 in the whole bowl of sauce that I did, and I put a little bit on. And that's the problem, right? You have people, when you get involved in the diet that go, hey, you absolutely cannot do this. Like, absolutely no ketchup. And you're like, but like, if that's the difference between you eating it and not eating it, then do it. Right?
Well, it's like, first of all, you were spot on. My other question is this. Like, hey, bro, did you personally go kill that cow? Did you watch its entire process of it getting killed and what it went through and all that stuff? If not, I don't know if because one of the things I know for a fact is unless you are literally witnessing the farm and the lifestyle that these animals are going through, and it's a-okay, unless you can like actually put a little check mark, unless you're actually doing that, you're trusting whatever you're reading on the packaging, whatever deals have been made with whatever manufacturing companies and the food FDA, whatever. It's like, so before you go throw some stones, you better make sure everything about your process is A1, because I know for a fact it's like, cage free doesn't always mean cage free, and and it's like, so again, I think what you're doing in this space is really healthy especially for new people like me, because it's like, my question for you is the cheese part, right? So the dairy part, like I am not a big dairy guy at all. I do love milk. Like I do actually like to just drink milk. And I know that's probably not great for this. I'm also a big water guy. Love drinking just water. But how with the cheese, is that where you get your fat? Like what is the deal with the cheese part that you're always incorporating? Because for me, I hate cheese. I'm just not a cheese guy at all. And my wife is, and I know most everybody is, but like, is that to like bypass the bun? Like what is the cheese part to you? Is it flavor? What do you like about that?
I just love cheese, right? And so that is a part. Carnivore in the, if you go to the guy who wrote probably the initial book on the Carnivore Diet, and he'll say he didn't come up with it, right? Like people have proposed, eating meat before. So it's not some novel idea that he invented. But he's the first one probably to bring it to mainstream. And generally speaking, prioritize meat, egg, and then dairy is as tolerated.
Okay.
So it's one of those things that if you have no problems with dairy, then by all means, it's easy to get out of control with dairy, but for the most part, a lot of people have issues with dairy. A lot of people are lactose intolerant or something like that.
Is drinking milk okay or no?
No, it is. It's fine as long as you don't have an issue with it.
Really?
Yeah. So
Oh.
what people will often say is if you do have an issue with dairy, going away from pasteurized, so to raw, oftentimes is a lot better for people, and they'll find out that they don't have issues because you also get a lot of nutrients out of especially raw dairy because it hasn't been killed off by pasteurization. So the dairy thing is kind of a dependent per person. I love cheese, and cheese for me is in place of condiments.
Oh, cool.
I'm not really somebody who would just eat a plain burger patty with nothing. Right? I need something, and cheese is that something. If I have cheese, I don't need ketchup, or I don't need hot sauce, or I don't need sour cream or ranch or anything like that. Without cheese, I'm a little more like it becomes more work for me.
Yeah.
So that is something that's super easy for me to get out of control. Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, cool, I had 5 slices of cheese so far. Probably chill out.
What's your sorry if I'm asking you too many questions. I was so excited to get on here because I was like, I'm going to really I'm actually going to, I was telling Erica, I was like, man, when I need to get back strict, whatever I'm going to do, I need to do that, but I need to do it strict. And so I was like, I'm going to ask you questions on here because I'm like, I actually want to understand this. My question for you, of course, is what do you have any temptations outside of the diet? I mean, obviously I know you'll do some cheese or you'll do some whatever, but do you because to me, my wife crushes Italian food. She crushes it, and it's one of my happiest, but it's also, of course, it's when it makes me tired and it makes me, not want to do much. And, but when I might go a week with just being strict on whatever diet I'm doing and just, oh man, I'm so good. But it's like, man, if we have the makings for spaghetti or lasagna or chicken parm or what fettuccine, I'm like, I just don't know how people get away from that. And then the other question is because I'm not an expert, is is it possible to be disciplined enough to do something where you do eat something like that and then just say, okay, I need to step it up here, and here for X amount of days? Like how they say if you drink soda, which I'm not really big on, but you drink 8 glasses of water to flush it out or whatever. It's is there oops, I did that this day. What do you do to get back on the path for the next week? Anyways, what's the meal for you that's, if anything, that gets you kind of,
Mine kind of goes in waves. Mostly for me, it's if I'm going to go out to dinner, right?
Sure.
I am not somebody, one, I don't go out to dinner very often. But 2, I'm also not somebody that I'm going to pay to have something that tastes worse than what I could make at home.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
That's painful for me. So I almost never ever order steak out at a restaurant. And so now all of a sudden, things start getting limited. And I don't want to pay $10 to have somebody cook up, an inferior burger patty and just serve me a burger patty. I'm not going to enjoy that. So if I am going to, quote unquote, cheat, that's probably what it's going to be. And then I'm not going to try to, I'm a big proponent of not trying to dress up something to make it to trick yourself. That's probably my biggest problem with keto is you'll find these, hey, it's this keto dessert. Man, it tastes just like dessert, right? No, it doesn't.
I know.
No, it doesn't. There's nothing
keto,
about
bro.
this that tastes and I don't want that. I either want the full Monty or I want nothing.
If you're going to pay for it, yeah.
Yeah, even if I'm going to make it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll make some stuff with a little bit of variations, but most of it is not a taste thing for me. If I make a bun, it's so I can actually hold it and I can put flavors together and stuff like that. It's not because I miss the taste of bread, right? You're not going to see me out here making like egg strip, scrambled egg strip noodles so I can like pretend I'm having fettuccine Alfredo or
Oh
something.
my God.
Like that is not my weakness at all. So, what I try to tell people is, to go back to your point of if I do this, can I do that? Again, I think that's dependent on where you're at and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're having a lot of inflammatory issues, like you're trying to overcome some skin issues or you're trying to overcome diabetes or, any type of these issues that require you to be more strict, then I think that's where you just give it up and you don't settle. For me, I know that I could pick one day a week, maybe one meal a day, 1 meal a week, where I just eat literally whatever I want. Like I'm talking like 3 burgers from Carl's Jr., like a large fry, a shake, and I can do that once a week and get exactly where I want to go because I've done it. Like that's my cheat meal. And going into shows, that would be something that I would do all the time. Is all the way up until the last couple of weeks, is I would have my one cheat meal. If I was craving something, I would get it. I would eat all of it. I'd eat a whole package of Oreos if that's what it was. I'd eat like half a tub of peanut butter, like no holds barred, eat whatever you want. Right? And I'd still accomplish what I'm trying to do, which is, lose weight that way. So when I tell people, it's like, just build that in, right? If that's going to be your thing, if I know I'm going to go out, maybe it's on a date or maybe we have, whatever it is, and we're going to eat at a restaurant, that's going to be my day where I'm going to eat whatever I want. And I don't choose like the super unhealthy stuff, but I'm not going to try and tell a waiter that I'm only going to eat this and just bring me like a plain steak with nothing on it. And, be like, man, I'm paying $30 for this and this is way better at home for $4.99. Like,
dude.
So that's how I build it in.
Is it a day or is it a meal for you?
I do a meal.
Okay.
And I call it a day, but I will usually, if I know I'm going to do that, I'll eat good up into it. And then maybe like dinner dessert is not okay. Right. Or I'll eat dinner and then maybe I'll get home and I'm like, well, I'm just going to snack now. So if there's chips, like chips are probably my biggest, kryptonite.
Oh yeah.
So it's a window, right? But it's not all day. Like I don't wake up and I'm like donuts in the morning and I'm going to, drinking 800 calories of Dunkin' Donuts coffee for, my midday snack. And then I'm going to go have pasta. And so that when I try and tell people how to get started is just incorporate that. Mm-hmm. And if you know that's going to happen, plan for it. And now you don't feel like that's a break in discipline. Because that's the killer, right? Is when you're, I'm not supposed to, I'm supposed to be good. And then you're like, I'll just have one. Like, that'll be fine, right? And then you eat a whole bag and you're like, oh man, I shouldn't do that. Like, I'm going to be better. And then 2 days later, you're like, I've been good, right? Like, I just won. And then you eat a whole bag and then it just spirals.
Oh, yeah.
And so I tell people if that's, if you don't have a major issue that you're trying to overcome and overall health is just what it is, don't be afraid to incorporate it, Don't be afraid to, hey, I know I'm going out Halloween, right? I'm going to a party on Halloween and I want to be able to eat something. So, all week I'm super good. And then I go out and I enjoy myself on Halloween and then I get right back on the horse the next day. And I don't feel bad about it because it was part of the plan.
Do you, well, first of all, by the way, when you say like the whole dressing it up or whatever, that's how I feel about when people say like, oh, try this cauliflower, like mashed potatoes or whatever. I'm like, bro, that smells like feet. I don't like, no, thank you. Like you said, if I'm going to eat something, I don't want to have to be like, well, it's keto or it's whatever. It's like, I'm either doing exactly what I should, like what at least I think I should be doing, or I'm not doing, I'm just going to enjoy myself. My question for you, what you said, so you go to this party, right? Do you drink?
Sometimes. Right. And that's another one that, especially in this community, you'll find, and I get it, right? Alcohol's basically literal poison that you're putting in your body.
Sure.
But I enjoy it, right? Like I enjoy wine and I enjoy scotch.
Oh, nice.
Very, 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 very rarely will it ever get to the point where it starts to, I start feeling like inebriated. Like I'm like a 2-drink max guy.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I will on occasion. And I do that because I have not seen the negative side effects, right? And it's not something that I can't give up, right? If I'm not going to drink for 2 months. Okay, I'm not going to drink for 2 months. So that's something that people will butt heads over, and that's kind of like a taboo topic where everybody tries to pretend like nobody drinks. But I do on occasion. And if I do go out to dinner, yeah, I might have a glass of wine. But again, that's something that I'm planning. What I don't like is if, you get to the end of a long day and you're like, man, I'm beat. Like, I need a drink.
Nice tall one. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. No, that's like hey, I know on this day I'm going to have a drink because that's, we call it your reward, call it your whatever it is. And then that way I feel like I'm still staying on discipline.
It's really unfortunate that, so first of all, I couldn't agree more. I'm like you in the sense that it's like, I actually don't drink a lot, despite what any weird posts I put out there, whatever. It's like, I literally don't. After we had our twins, we just never really got back on that. We just kind of, our alcohol just kind of sits in our house. But I will tell you, you keep saying like, cause I want, like, oh, cause I want to or whatever. I think the other thing, my deep underlying issue is that, we're all here for a certain amount of time, right? Now, then you go wherever you think you're going to go, whatever. But like, we're all here. Some people are going to make it till 80. Some people are going to make it till 90. And then some people, if you want to make it that long, some people might make it, into the hundreds, whatever. But it's like, how much do you want? Like, how much, like, we all see the person that chain smokes, right? And eats like crap. And it's like, they're like, they made it into their like mid 90s, and you're like, what the heck? I know Susie Q, who was a ultra whatever, and she died at 55. She had 7 tumors in her head. Like, and you're thinking like, what? Not what's the point, but it's like, I also struggle with finding balance in this goes for business too. I've never wanted to be 85 years old and look back and be like, man, I regretted X, Y, and Z, right? I should have had more fun here. I should have done this. And I think that I struggle with that because like you were talking about alcohol, it's like for me it's whiskey. Like I can go 2 months, 3 months, no problem, not even have a drop. But the thought of not doing it forever, it makes me sick because it's like I actually like the taste of Jack and Coke or Bullet and Coke or whatever. And I actually do love the taste of carne asada tacos or a California burrito. And then thinking about you're just done. Like the rest of your life is written a certain way. That really does. And I'm glad like we can be open on this podcast because it's like, it actually is one of those things that I really struggle with. I struggle with anything that is written out in stone for the rest of my life, no matter what it is. Marriage and kids are the only things that I've been totally, totally fine with. Everything else has been like, oh my gosh. So I think that's deep down. That's probably one of my issues too, is like, I have no problem eating consistently and seeing results and understanding, yeah, it takes a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever. But the idea being like, not like these weird people, like you talk about, like, no, you can't do whatever. It's like, okay, guy, like tell me what's the goal here? Is the goal to be 98 and have only done it this way, or is the goal to be 95 and then to be able to sprinkle in some fun along the way? And everyone's different, and like you said, everyone's doing it for a different reason. If you have, if you're diabetic or you're fighting something, sure, but I think that's the thing that I currently, knock on wood, don't have anything that's ultra like 911, and obviously I don't want to wait until there is something like that. But I also want to be able to sprinkle in some fun along the way. And it's like, I would hate to be hanging out with you and you be like, not that obviously you're more strict on the diet. It's like, but for you to be like, hey man, let's have a drink. I'm like, no, God, no. Oh, no, I'll stick with water and a bad attitude and awkward conversations. Like, no, I actually like to loosen up a little bit. So yeah, that's tough for me.
Yeah. And that's part of like, so when I first started the page, I actually really got into it with people over sugar. And that's part of the issue that I think turns people off a lot is it's very common to see people make posts that are like, it's all sugar, right? Bread, fruit, table sugar, honey, like it's all sugar. Sugar's bad. I'm like, okay, like I understand what you're trying to say. The average person's going to see that and be like, you absolutely cannot eat anything that has sugar ever again. Like, well, a lot of people like sugar. Like, they do. I like fruit. That's why I eat some of it.
Right. I think it has
But
sugar in it too.
yeah, but what you're doing is you're taking like a complicated matter and making it super simple and telling people, no, you absolutely can't do it.
Right.
Which is what happens with the alcohol, right?
Right.
Alcohol's bad. Like, I don't think there's any study out there that's like
Right.
health is improved after drinking. Like,
No,
everybody knows that.
no. Sometimes it'll be like you'll see this weird article. It's like it'll grow your testicles or your or bigger whatever if you have. And I'm thinking sweet, like you're lying, but sweet.
Yeah. So, I mean, so everybody knows that, right? But
Yeah.
it is, and I think it's a balance. And back to the sugar, it's like, okay, well, I understand the sentiment. Like, you can't just make a blanket statement like that because sugar is carbs and the body does need carbs. And yes, the body can produce carbs, but you're trying to take a complex issue and make it super strict, and that turns a lot of people off, right? They're like, you're telling me that I can never have a piece of fruit. Like, I could be down in Mexico and have some locally grown papaya, or I don't know if they grow papaya in Mexico, but I've had papaya in Mexico and it was fantastic, you know, and I'm served this and I can't ever have that. And I think that's does a disservice to what people are trying to do, because it creates the, you know, the scenario that you're describing.
Yeah. The other thing that really like is hard, and especially if you go on TikTok and you just scroll for long enough, you'll end up in the health and wellness space regardless of whether you intended to be there or not. And it's like, by the way, I don't judge anyone in what they do, how they get the body they want, like whatever. You want to do whatever you want to do to look the way you want to look, more power to you. But what drives me crazy is when you'll get some of these like fitness influencers that'll be like, nah, man, you could eat this and you could get like carbs, bro. Like, yeah, your body needs carbs. Like, I'm not gonna call a guy out, but there's a dude specifically, he's a little younger and he's huge right now online. And this dude will be like, yeah, bro, you carbs, this, that. I'm like, hey, my
Sam
guy.
Solik?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be like,
Oh, yeah.
no, your body does not look like that because of, well, it does look like that because of what you're putting in your body. And I don't judge, but come on now, let's pull back a little bit. It's like if I go eat Chick-fil-A after each, workout on my current regimen, I'm not gonna look like I won't look like your thigh. You know what I mean? So it's like, again, it's such a weird industry where it's like you're either ultra whatever, you're ultra, I wouldn't call it fake, but I would call it ultra like, you're not thinking about how your body actually looks the way it does, right? And then you've got the guys that are like you where it's like, no, again, if you're in this window, you're good. If you take a step out, if you take a step out, just make sure you come back. Just make sure you're able to kind of come back and bring it back. And now that is hard for a lot of people, right? You take that foot out, as you said, sometimes that foot gets out a lot more often, and then you're completely out. So it's all about balance, I think. And then obviously being consistent. Consistency is really good as well. But yeah, man, I just wanted to throw that in there. That drives me absolutely bonkers when I see stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, man, but and I'm sure he's not denying anything, but it's like, don't also, who do you think is watching your content? Like who's watching it? It's like, if you're just talking to a bunch of gearheads, like, cool, that's awesome. But there's a lot of people that aren't on anything and they're like, oh, okay, sure, I'll go, eat some pudding. It's like, nah, man.
Well, it's such a confusing space because, the latest study that came out, and I actually had fun with this one because it's a horrible study. Mm-hmm. I brought this up on a podcast about how, and this is why nutritional studies are so tough.
Yeah.
The headline is eating red meat even twice a week can increase your chance of all-death mortality by diabetes. I'm sorry, diabetes. Can increase your chance of diabetes by 50%.
It was Harvard, right? Was it Harvard?
Harvard study.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, and you read that, and you read the articles, because you're not scrolling PubMed, right? You're not on there being like, what's the latest research article? Like, you don't have a subscription to the American, Health Journal, or like it's American Nutrition and Health Journal, whatever it is. Like, you're not getting updates. You're not reading that in a magazine. Like, you're seeing articles, and you're seeing CNN post it, and you're seeing Fox post it, and that's the headline. And all the article does is talk about how they found a correlation between people who eat meat more have a higher chance of diabetes. And that's what you come away with. And you're like, should I stop eating red meat? So actually, I had to do a little bit of digging. I know a guy who's a med student at Harvard. And because originally when they come out, you can't access the full study, right? You have to have institutional access or pay for it. And the abstract was the least informative thing I've ever read. It's like, after following people for 17 years, we deducted after 20,000 people that 50% higher risk if you eat meat in the, first quintile versus the fifth quintile. So don't eat red meat because you're going to die. I'm like, wait, what? Like, that's literally all the information. Didn't talk about how they did the study or anything. So I got a hold of the full article or the full study. And I'm just like, so first of all, most people don't understand about nutritional studies is most of them are questionnaires, right? It's, hey, Jesse, I'm going to send you a questionnaire and you're going to tell me what you eat on an average basis. You're going to fill out this questionnaire. And then in a couple of years, I'm going to come back to you and you're going to do it again. And we're going to do that over the next 15 years. And you go, okay. So I send you the study and then I go, okay, Jesse, did you eat meat 5 times a day yesterday? Over the past 6 months, did you eat meat 5 times a day or 4 times a day? Or was it 3 times a day? Or 2 times a day? And you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I ate 2 weeks ago or how many times I did, right? And so that's the compilation of data that you do, right? Yeah. And so then also you have the issues with the questionnaire itself where a serving of meat is not only like I ate steaks or I ate a burger, it's also I had a sandwich or I had lasagna or I had, a calzone or I had pizza. That counts as a serving of meat. So now what I'm doing is I'm compiling data that's not even accurate. Like I'm trying to prove, a correlation is not causation, but I'm trying to prove that based on this faulty information. And then the study started in the 70s. And so then the questionnaire changed. So then they had to make some adjustments. And they're like, so we recalculated. And then the risk went from 25% to 50%. And you're like, okay, this is just literally the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. And then you really get down to it and you find out that that 50% is a relative risk, right? So that says, hey, there's 100,000 people out of there. And between you and me, one of us is going to get diabetes. And so then it's like, if I get it, like I have 50% more chance of getting it than you. When in reality, we both have a 0.1% chance of getting diabetes, period.
Right.
Right? The absolute risk was that group that ate the most meat was 1% more likely to get diabetes than the other group that ate the least amount of meat. And you're like, seriously? Like, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever read in my life. But then people are, that's what they hear. So then they go on social media, right? I'm long-winded, but it's coming around. Then they go on social media. They're like, I can't believe any of the headlines. One thing says meat's terrible. One thing says meat's good. Like, I don't know what to believe. So I'm going to find somebody that I want to look like, and I'm going to take their advice. And I don't know if that person is qualified. I don't know if that person actually eats that way, right? It's like the vegan who's vegan on social media, and then you catch them eating a hamburger at a restaurant. Like, that was a UFC fighter. It's like, I'm vegan. And they're like, what's this then? Like, some paparazzi's like, you're eating a burger, bro.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm trying to get all this information out of a vacuum. And yeah, I love Sam. For some reason, I can't think of the correct way to pronounce his last name. I love him. Like, I think he's awesome.
Love him too. I want to make that known. I actually love his content, but he's
a super nice guy. Yeah. He's super open about, like, he's like, I take a shit on a steroid. Yeah. We're like, no kidding.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't agree with his take. Like, it works for him on what he's trying to do. But if the average American goes, I'm going to eat this giant bowl of Frosted Flakes for breakfast so I can look like him, it's not going to end well.
A better example would be telling people, eat raw liver, and we all see an injection in your stomach and you're the liver king, but we all know what you're really doing. It's like that.
Exactly.
That was the worst kept secret in the history of kept secrets. It's again, and I don't judge. Dude, you want to do what you want to do. You want to look the way you want to. Listen, we're on here for so long on this earth. You want to look like a Greek god? Go do it. That's awesome. the other thing you were talking about studies that I think is insane. You know, I feel like we do. You know, I don't know if it's the FDA. Like I don't know who it is. But I feel like somebody does their best job. You know, have you ever done like a pre-workout and then it was amazing, and then all of a sudden it's like they come out of the 2.0, but it's missing the stuff in it that made it amazing because they got hit by
All
whoever.
jacked.
Right? Yeah, Jack 3D or whatever. Yeah, it's like so that, but like you know, like SARMs, right? I think they're. Am I pronouncing that correctly? SARMs. Like they're like, oh well, you know, there's a study that has it linked to cancer because we gave rats. For like 6 months straight, human-sized dosages, and it gave them tumors. Like, okay, so, but I'm a human, right? Like,
Right.
and you didn't give me a giant, like, I'm not taking a giant dosage of that. It's like, that's the kind of stuff, by the way, I'm not promoting SARMs or anything like that. I'm just saying, it's like, really read, like, I'm glad you did that. Read into the studies and how they came up with their conclusion, because a lot of this is like, what are we doing here? Like, are you guys actually, are you guys, it's almost like there's a game, you know, they're like, no, we want to keep everybody super duper average and super duper unhealthy, because it's like, it's just the weirdest thing. It's like, if you're going to let a test result like that say, this is why you guys can't, you know, eat more or breathe better when you're working out or whatever. It's like, to me, that's weird. There's something going on there. That's weird. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's like, honestly, I just try to keep it like as real as possible with people on here, and I get some hate for it. Like, I'll inevitably get hate over stuff that I eat. They're like, that's not carnivore. I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? I'm also not pretending. I could make it look like I am the most strict carnivore in the history of the world. I could do that super easy for social media.
You just, in fact, I'll one up you. You're like, I'm not even gonna cook this steak. I'm gonna eat this bull right here in front of you guys, and he's still breathing. So if you can
Right?
cover your eyes, because this is gonna get messy.
Yeah, no, like that would be super easy. Like, I could edit out anything I wanted to, right? Like,
Right.
it's just, but I don't think that does people a service, because they see that and they think, well, that's their life. Like, that's what they do. And I'm like, no, it's not that way. Like, the people who are like, I have not varied off my diet in 7 years. I'm like, that's not true.
Dude,
Stop.
I love that. I love that you are the way you are, because it's like, and the thing is you'll attract more people to, like, to your involvement, whatever it is in the future. Like, you'll attract more people into this space than weirdos who are 100% whatever, because it's like sales, right? In a weird way. It's like, and I know you're not necessarily thinking you're selling people on this diet, but it's like, do you want to go with somebody that is like, sounds like a robot, or do you want to go with somebody that is like fluid and cool, but still sticks to those principles when we're talking sales, right? It's the same thing with this. It's like, is anyone going to move the needle if they sound like a weirdo, or if somebody's like, no, you know what? Every now and then I'll throw some cheese on there. I'll do whatever, because I don't want to blow my brains out. And look at my body. I look great. So, you know, it's like, look at the results. You said you'll follow anyone that has the results you want. I think that's like, right? Assuming that they're doing what they're said that they're doing. And I love that, because it's like, again, that's the other thing. You get somebody that's like super strict, and they, like, for whatever reason, because you don't follow them home, they don't look quite like the results that they should be getting, but they are the loudest talker in the room saying this is the way the diet is. Oof.
That's always the person, right? It's always the person that's like, garlic's not carnivore.
Yeah, like, well, where's
like,
your
bro,
abs, bro?
Yeah, come back to me when you have, like, if you're Chris Bumstead, you know who Chris Bumstead is?
Yeah, C-bomb, yeah.
The GOAT, right?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
C-Bum comes to me and goes, man, I don't know about the garlic, like this and that, I'm like, that's fine. Like, you are the pinnacle of having everything down. And if now you want to talk about garlic, great, let's do it. But if you're like not anywhere where you want to be, or you're not, you know, the peak of health and fitness, and you want to attack people over the 1 gram of sugar per serving, like, you got bigger fish to fry, man. Like, and that doesn't do a service to anybody, because now somebody out there is reading that, and they go, man, like, I can't even have like a single gram. What? Like, oh my gosh, I saw that there's half a carb in eggs. Can I eat eggs now? Like, is that okay? And you're like, bro, like, chill. Like, it's, and I don't do this because of like the genre that I'm in, and like, I'm not trying to promote this. but it's also difficult for me not to be like, I'm going to do an experiment and I'm going to eat tablespoons of sugar,
Right.
right, every single day and show that I can still be healthy.
Do you know? Do you know what it sounds like to me? And by the way, again, I always try to like preface everything that I say with saying like people deal with stuff that I don't know about. I'm at the end of the day, even if you're a weirdo and you're doing carnivore, I think that's better than doing what I'm doing and eating hot Cheetos and whatever. It's like, but it sounds like the people that take these things very strict, like I mean, like where they're almost obnoxious. They sound like honestly like addicts. You know, how, like an addict has to switch to a new, like somebody who like quits drugs, but then they become like super religious, or they. It's like it's got to be all in on something, whether it's good or whether it's harmful to your body. It's got to be all in, and so I'm not saying that that's 100% of what's going on with a lot of these people, but it really does reek of that. And so if you're ever trying to do something like this, and you're like, man, some of these people are super aggressive or whatever, you have to remember everyone's got their own reason for doing stuff, but learn to spot some of the clues, I suppose. It's like,
For sure. All right, we're about wrapping up.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, questions?
No, man, I would just say this. I think that what you're doing with the brand and in this space is really cool. I remember when you were talking to me about it before I even knew what Carnivore was, and I was like, yeah, man, that sounds great. And honestly, to watch this brand like really blossom into what it is, and to see people really tuning into your videos, even myself, I'm like, that's amazing. Like I think that your videos legit look like I can almost smell them, and it's like it's really really cool. Yeah, I obviously, this goes without saying, keep up the good work, but this has been it's been a lot of fun watching you elevate. And then again, like I said, that you're not some sort of like, I mean, anyone listening, you'll realize you get a lot farther off in growing your following and growing your brand and getting people involved. If you're passionate about what you're talking about, you get a lot farther if you're not so robotical and you're a little bit more fluid, a little bit more like a chameleon, not in a bad way, but like in a good way. And yeah, I would be more interested in learning from people that could teach me how to act if I accidentally did something I wasn't supposed to eat or do something, how to get back, right? Like that kind of stuff, not the just chastising somebody that should never have, eaten a sandwich or something to begin with. But again, man, love the fact that you're launching this podcast, and I can't wait to watch it grow. And then, of course, I can't wait to be back on. And at some point, I'm gonna shock you. It'll be like, I won't tell you. I'll be like, hey man, it's been like 3 months. I'm just eating stuff raw now. I'm even that hardcore. There's just blood dripping. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's been really cool, really cool.
All right. Well, I appreciate you, Jesse. I know you're huge on social media. Where can people find you? I know you do a whole bunch of stuff on content creation.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you do a whole bunch of stuff that I don't even know about, back alley, like dark web type stuff. But where can people find you if they want to get more information?
If they truly want to actually get a hold of me, Reel, REEL, because I obviously specialize in like short video content, but ReelJesseBelvin, JesseBelvin. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Obviously, I'm much bigger on JesseDrama.com on Instagram, but I promise you, if you reach out to me on there, there's like almost a 0% chance I'll reach back, because I get the weirdest messages on there. But if you go to the other account, my personal account, I will more likely than not be able to respond to you. And yeah, I do content creation. I do. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much my bread and butter. You don't want health and fitness advice from me. So.
No, I'll include some links down in the description, especially for people. 95% of people on here are doing some type of content creation. For those of you that don't know, I basically got my start and learned all of my basics from Jesse for content creation, from how to do videos to how to edit videos to how to upload and like all that kind of stuff. So if you do have any questions, want to learn more about content creating, I'll include a couple links below on how to follow Jesse. I'll include your drama account because you do some funny stuff on there. Hopefully that doesn't get me like banned or something, but
Where did that link come from? Hey, side note, but if you do want to learn how to grow on Twitter, do not come to me because this dude is smashing it over there. And I'm like, I just sit back and I'm like this. I'm like that guy that's like this, great Joel, I'm so happy for you.
all right, man. Well, it has been a pleasure. To everybody listening, thank you very much on the inaugural episode of the Inner Carnivore. For more information, you can go to the website, theinnercarnivore.com. This will also be on YouTube as well as short clips on the other social media platforms. Go to theinnercarnivore.com, sign up for the blog. We will send out a post on where this is being hosted platform-wise. And I appreciate everybody and look forward to doing episode number 2.